Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks to @TonyWhite9873 and @NoOneWillKnow7080 for pointing out that there was some repetition in the last video after chapter 116. So we're covering chapters 117 through 125 in this one. Let's dive in. Chapter 117. The show stealing Chen Luo, Part 1. In order to welcome the upcoming awakening ceremony, holding a dance party the day before the ceremony has become a tradition of the vampire family for hundreds of years. Therefore, at tonight's ball, everyone is dressed up, fully showing the importance they attach to this ball. From the outside, this old castle, which is the stronghold of vampires, is a bit ordinary, but once you enter it, you will find that the interior decoration is simply extremely luxurious. Covering the entire ground, a red carpet with a length and width of tens of meters was laid under the feet of everyone. This carpet was sewn by hand, and the most delicate fabrics were used. It took nearly 10 years to complete it. The process can be described as extremely complicated. It can be said that the cost of this carpet alone has reached nearly $10 million, and it is just an insignificant decoration in this magnificent castle. In addition to the carpet, all the candlesticks, tableware, and even the huge amounts of chandelier placed above everyone's heads in the castle are all made of gold, and the gold used is even more scattered. Is up to nearly a ton or so. Adding up such weight, the value has reached a terrifying billions of dollars. Such a terrifying figure simply exceeds the imagination of ordinary people. In addition, there are murals hanging on the wall, and the swords that seem to be quite old are displayed among them, which adds a bit of historical precipitation to this ancient castle, and makes many young people who come here for the first time the vampires couldn't help being amazed. All these decorations add up, and its value is definitely more than tens of billions of dollars. Such a figure is naturally unimaginable in the eyes of ordinary people, but it seems normal in front of vampires whose lifespan is far longer than that of ordinary humans. After all, these wealth are all accumulated by them for hundreds of years to reach the current state. Coupled with the countless companies they have mastered over the years, unless they are geniuses at Tony's level, they can catch up with them in just a few decades, but if they are ordinary people, I am afraid that they can work hard all their lives. The value created is at most only worth an ordinary candlestick in this castle. As the ball approached, many vampires dressed in costumes came to the castle. Most of them came here from other European countries, because the awakening ceremony would only be rotated every 300 years, so today's ball is also very rare. Most of the people came to this ancient castle for the first time, and everyone seemed extremely curious about everything here. Is this the base camp of our family? It looks really good. Yeah, this is much more luxurious than our base there. It would be great if I could stay here forever. That's not impossible. You can try to join the Daywalker. If you can join this army, then you can apply for permanent residence here. Forget it. I heard that some time ago, dozens of Daywalkers went to the north, but they were all slaughtered by the butcher in the north. If I join the Daywalkers, what will I do if I meet that butcher in the future? I don't want to be killed just like that. Quiet, don't talk. Someone is coming. While everyone was discussing, finally, just before the ball was about to start, Kuluin and his party walked down from the second floor slowly. Craven was the first to walk in front, followed by Erica, who was dressed in a white dress, highlighting her exquisite figure to the fullest. Beside Erica, Eva, who was dressed in a bright red dress and had an even bigger figure than the previous one, squinted her charming eyes slightly and looked at everyone with a smile. Immediately afterwards, behind the two of them, Selena, who had already taken off her usual black leather jacket and was wearing a long black dress, with a slender figure and an even more stunning appearance, walked lightly and walked forward slowly. Ignoring Craven at the front, everyone's eyes unconsciously focused on the three people behind them, and their eyes were full of undisguised amazement. Undoubtedly, after seeing the three of Serena appear on the stage, everyone's eyes were firmly attracted by the three of them. No matter in terms of appearance or temperament, the three of them were far superior to anyone present. Looking at the three Serenas with very different temperaments and beautiful appearances ahead, all the female vampires who were originally confident in their appearance also all had gloomy eyes and felt extremely frustrated. As for the other men, looking at the three of Serena who amazed everyone in front of them, there was a trace of fire in their eyes. At this moment, they had already started to think in their hearts, what kind of reason should they use next to invite the three of them to dance together? Song. Chapter 117. The show stealing Chen Luo, Part 2. After the three of Serena walked downstairs one by one, finally, Chen Luo's figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. Wearing a simple and slim suit, he fully displayed his tall and perfect figure in front of everyone, with a handsome appearance, black eyes and black hair, and no expression on his face, moving forward with a straight face. Chen Luo walked slowly, although he didn't make a sound, but for some reason, everyone could clearly feel an invisible pressure rushing towards their faces. Their breaths were stagnant, and they looked at Chen Luo subconsciously with a touch of solemnity. Seeing the figure of Chen Luo approaching, Erica's eyes sparkled, and a trace of amazement flashed on her face. Thinking of the upcoming dance party, she felt a little impatient. On the other side, the smile on Eva's face also became more and more charming. She squinted her captivating eyes. Her eyes flickered slightly, and she didn't know what she was thinking. And after seeing the suit Chen Luo was wearing, Serena's cold face unconsciously raised a slight arc. Looking into Chen Luo's eyes, an inexplicable emotion was quietly flowing. After Chen Luo arrived at the scene, as the nominal manager of the castle, Craven gave a routine speech to everyone, and then he had no intention of speaking. Immediately afterwards, the dance began as scheduled. When the ball started, a group of men and women walked towards their goals at the same time. The goal of the men was very clear. After seeing the three Serenas appearing on the stage, they could no longer tolerate other people in their eyes. With confident smiles, they stepped forward to the three of them and invited them. As far as other female vampires are concerned, most of them cast their eyes on Chen Luo, who appeared at the end. They walked lightly and came to Chen Luo with a smile, and looked at Chen Luo with a little fiery eyes. Disguise your intentions. Seeing so many beauties in front of him inviting him one after another, to be honest, Chen Luo felt a little strange in his heart. Although he and the others are not as good as Serena and the others in terms of appearance, they are not inferior to the models and actors he found when he and Tony were hanging out some time ago. Fantastic existence. Although he was a little moved, in the end Chen Luo firmly rejected their invitation, and it was impossible not to refuse. With Chen Luo's keen senses, he could clearly feel that there were three eyes not far away, but they were staring closely at each other. On his side, if he really dares to agree, what will be waiting for him in the future, but he is a little uncertain. Sure enough, after seeing Chen Luo keep waving his hands to reject the invitations of those coquettish sluts, Erica's smile suddenly became more charming. With a smile on her face, Erica quickly rejected the invitations of the people in front of her, and then, taking advantage of Serena's inattention behind her, she quickly walked towards Chen Luo. Chris, can I have a dance? Looking at Erica, who was blinking constantly and her face was full of expectation, Chen Luo definitely would not refuse, slowly got up, with a smile on his face, stretched out his right hand, and said softly, "So Miss Erica, can you dance with me?" Seeing Chen Luo's movements, Erica smiled happily on her pretty face, nodded slightly, then put her left hand into Chen Luo's palm, and the two looked at each other and walked towards the dance floor with a smile. Not far away, I saw Erica coming to Chen Luo's side before she was not paying attention, and the two were dancing in the middle of the dance floor. Serena's originally smiling face turned cold in an instant, and she exuded an aura of not being close to strangers. She rejected the invitations of the people in front of her expressionlessly, and then came to the side table to sit down. Seeing Serena's performance, Eva smiled, politely declined the invitation of everyone in front of her, and then slowly came to sit next to Serena under the disappointed gaze of everyone. It's really rare. It's the first time I've seen Serena, and you are so angry because of a man. It seems that after so many years, Serena has finally found someone who makes her heart flutter. Hearing this, Serena's originally expressionless face instantly became a little flustered. A blush appeared on her face, and she subconsciously wanted to explain. I do not. Before the words were finished, Eva's next words sounded immediately. But it's a pity that Serena is not the only one who likes this man. Hearing this, Serena, who originally wanted to explain, was speechless for a moment. Looking at Erica, who was smiling and looking very happy in front of her, she subconsciously frowned. However, just when she was in a daze, before she knew it, the song between Chen Luo and Chen Luo had ended, but she didn't notice it at all. Since Serena, if you haven't moved yet, I'll go there first. Chapter 117. The Show Stealing Chen Luo, Part 3. Suddenly, with the sound of Eva's voice, Serena finally came back to her senses, and before she could realize the meaning of Eva's words, the next moment, she saw Eva stand up slowly, facing Chen Luo. Direction. Serena. On the other side, Chen Luo, who had just finished a song, had not had time to rest for a while, and then saw Eva walking towards him slowly, swaying her sexy body, stretched out left and right, and handed it to Chen Luo. Eva blinked her enchanting and charming eyes, with an intoxicating smile on her face and said, "Suddenly I want to dance too. Chen Luo, I don't know if you are willing to accompany me?" Looking at the other party in surprise, after a long while, Chen Luo got up helplessly and stretched out his hand to hold the other party's palm. It seems that I have no room to refuse. Afterwards, under the envious and jealous eyes of everyone around, Chen Luo took Eva back to the center of the dance floor, wrapped one hand around the other's slender waist, and moved his steps lightly, shaking his body to the rhythm of the music. Chen Luo was dancing, and he couldn't help but feel very lucky. If it wasn't for hanging out with Tony and the others for a while, he would still be blind to dancing, a must-learn skill for parties, and have no intention of learning it at all. If he hadn't learned how to dance, then he wouldn't be as comfortable as he is today. If he chooses to refuse the invitation from Erica and the others because he can't dance, then no matter for him or the other three will be a pity. A few minutes later, as the song ended, Chen Luo withdrew from the dance floor again. Chun, your dance is very good. Looking at Chen Luo, Eva praised with a smile. But now that the dance is over, shouldn't you move your hands away from my waist? Before Chen Luo could speak, Eva suddenly changed the subject and narrowed her eyes slightly. Looking at him with a half smile. I'm sorry, I was nervous for a while and I kind of forgot it. Facing Eva's unkind gaze, Chen Luo withdrew his right hand calmly and explained seriously. She rolled her eyes slightly, and then Eva seemed to think of something, and the smile on her face became brighter and brighter. Okay, then I'll forgive you. But even if I count you as passing this level next, you will not be so lucky with Serena. Well, good luck to you. After all, Eva gently waved goodbye, and then walked in the direction of Erica not far away. Hearing this, Chen Luo's face froze, and he turned his head subconsciously, looking in Serena's direction. At this moment, Selena no longer had the original smile on her face. She was sitting there alone. Her face was calm, and she exuded an aura of not getting close to strangers. She was as far away as an iceberg. People are thousands of miles away. Seeing this scene, 703 understood why the other party behaved like this. Chen Luo suddenly smiled wryly, glanced out of the corner of the eye, when he saw Erica Eva standing there not far away, staring at this side without blinking, as if watching a good show. Suddenly, Chen Luo the corner of his mouth curled up, and his face raised a curve. Seeing Chen Luo's expression, Eva were stunned for a moment, and then they saw Chen Luo turn around and walk towards Serena. Slowly came to Serena, as if she didn't see the indifferent face of the other party, slowly took out a gift box from her pocket, opened it in front of the other party, and took out the necklace inside out. Chen Luo looked at each other tenderly and said, Serena, this ocean star is specially prepared for you by me. It can be regarded as a gift in return for this dress. Do you like it or not? Looking at the necklace in Chen Luo's hand, Serena's cold face instantly disintegrated, and she looked at Chen Luo in a daze and said in disbelief, This is for me? Chen Luo nodded with a smile, and then said, How about it if you like it? I'll wear it for you? Hearing this, Serena's face suddenly became dizzy. She lowered her head slightly. She didn't agree, but she didn't refuse either. Seeing her reaction, Chen Luo smiled knowingly, came slowly behind her, and put the necklace in his hand on her swan-like neck. Below Serena's neck, in the center of the silver-white necklace, there is a sparkling azure gemstone dotted in it, which looks extremely magnificent. The shining gemstone and Serena, the combination of the two, added a different kind of charm to her, and attracted countless people around her to be amazed. Feeling the envious eyes around her, Serena's face became even more dizzy, and her heart was full of sweetness. At this moment, where did she have the indifference and gaze that kept people thousands of miles away before? Staring straight at Chen Luo, her beautiful eyes shone with an inexplicable luster. Then, Miss Serena, I wonder if I have the honor to invite you to dance with me? Chapter 117. The Show-Stealing Chen Luo, Part 4. Seeing her reaction, Chen Luo finally breathed a sigh of relief, stretched out his right hand, and extended the invitation with a smile on his face. Serena didn't say a word. With a smile on her face, she gently placed her hand on Chen Luo's palm, and then, under the gaze of countless envious eyes, the two walked towards the center of the dance floor together go. Seeing the dancing figures of the two on the dance floor, especially Serena's neck, where the azure blue necklace was shining with dazzling luster, Erica's eyes were full of undisguised wishes. She wanted to say something, but the next moment, when she thought of the gift Chen Luo gave her yesterday, her originally uncomfortable mood suddenly improved a lot, and she regained her calm. Seeing that Chen Luo solved the problem so easily, Eva sighed inwardly, feeling a little disappointed. As the dance progressed, at the same time, a secret murder was going on in a train station somewhere in the city, and the target of this ambush is none other than one of the three elders of the vampire clan, Amelia. Chapter 118. Part 1. A train station that looks a bit old. Accompanied by bursts of sirens, a train with a rather classical flavor gradually approached the platform, and then gradually stopped. Outside the train station, several pitch-black cars were parked here, and around the cars, a total of 50 Daywalkers stood quietly. When they saw the train in front of them finally stop, they immediately moved. The flashlight in their hands shook slightly, as if they were making some kind of secret signal, and following their movements, lights inside the train also lit up, flashing at an inexplicable frequency, as if responding. After confirming the identities of both parties, inside the train, the elite troops surrounding Amelia breathed a sigh of relief, then turned their heads to look at Amelia, and nodded slightly to show safety. Then let's get out of the car. There was a smile on Amelia's face, and when she was about to get off the train, there was a sudden harsh noise on the top of the train. Sizzle. As if the nails were scratching the iron sheet, there were sharp and piercing sounds. Everyone, including Amelia, changed their expressions when they heard this change. Not good, werewolf. Send a rescue signal to the outside world. Everyone looked terrified and subconsciously took precautions. At the same time, The soldiers in charge of communicating with the outside world kept waving their flashlights and sending help signals to the Deathwalkers outside through secret signals. Looking at the constantly flickering lights inside the train, the faces of the Deathwalkers outside were calm, without any change, as if they hadn't seen the signal and had no plans to rescue them at all. Under their quiet gaze on the roof of the train, a series of black figures jumped onto the roof one after another, letting out bursts of low-pitched roars. Under the cover of the night, the dozens of werewolves who came here at some unknown time unanimously launched an attack towards the carriage. The next moment, there was a sound of shattering glass in the carriage, and then a group of werewolves rushed towards the people in the carriage with quick steps. Damn, how do these werewolves know about this place? Werewolves are coming in. Shoot me. Bang, bang, bang. Immediately afterwards, with the sound of intensive gunfire, silver-plated bullets rained down on the werewolf in front of him. However, although they reacted quickly, facing the werewolf who was already close at hand, with the advantage in speed, only a small part of these bullets hit their bodies and it didn't hit the nail on the head. On the contrary, under the influence of the silver bullet, the werewolf in pain suddenly became more violent, opened his mouth full of fangs, waved his sharp claws, and ruthlessly grabbed everyone in front of him. A cold light flashed, and under the attack of the werewolf's sharp claws, in less than a few seconds, nearly half of the vampire elites had their throats scratched and fell to the ground powerlessly. Seeing this scene, the leader immediately understood that there was nothing to be done, so he immediately wanted to order everyone to escort the elder Amelia to evacuate. Without a chance to resist, they fell into a pool of blood one after another. Even Amelia, who was one of the three elders, although her strength is much stronger than other vampires, she is still outnumbered by dozens of werewolves and gradually lost cum. With more and more scars on her body, the blood gradually drained, and her strength began to gradually weaken. All the werewolves around her howled and charged as if they saw an opportunity. Under the siege of dozens of werewolves, finally, Amelia, who was powerless to resist, had her throat torn apart, her eyes widened, powerless to the end, and gradually lost her life. Seeing this, the werewolves around looked at each other and slowly changed back to human form again. The leader of them slowly came to Amelia's side, holding a needle in his hand, pierced into the opponent's body, and drew a large tube full of blood. Then, he stood up, looked at the others and said, "Okay, since we have obtained the elder's blood, it's time for us to leave." Looking at the bright red blood in his hand, a fanatical smile gradually appeared on his face. "As long as we have this, we will have enough power to avenge the vampire clan after the boss succeeds. By then, our werewolf clan will definitely be able to rise again." Watching a group of werewolves walk out of the carriage and then disappear into the night, outside the train station, a group of Deathwalkers who had been standing still and watching the whole battle got into the car one after another and drove towards the base camp. The other side. As time passed by, the dance was about to come to an end. At this moment, there was no one dancing on the dance floor, and everyone was sitting at the dining tables all around, with expressions on their faces that could not be concealed. What's going on here? Why hasn't Elder Amelia come here? Could it be that something unexpected happened? It shouldn't be possible, right? Elder Amelia is very strong, and besides her, there is an elite team for personal protection, plus the team of Deathwalkers sent out to take care of her. Can't think of anyone else who can pose a threat to the Elder? Chapter 118, Part 2, Then just wait. Maybe there will be news later. Everyone talked a lot. Although they were a little puzzled that Amelia hadn't come back yet, they didn't worry too much. They thought that the other party was just delayed by something, but they didn't expect that the other party might have encountered an unexpected fact. And for those who have known about all this for a long time, there are only two people in the castle now. Among the crowd, Craven glanced calmly at Chen Luo, who was not far away, and a hint of awe flashed in his heart. In fact, the reason why Amelia's whereabouts were known by the werewolf was because he revealed it to Lucian. More precisely, he obeyed Chen Luo's order and deliberately leaked the whereabouts of the other party. Regarding this point, Craven can also understand why Chen Luo is behind. Based on his understanding of Chen Luo, since Chen Luo intends to subdue the forces of vampires and werewolves, then for those who resist him or threaten him, Chen Luo naturally would not choose to be soft. And the reason why he went to New York to attack the Chen Luo family back then was only after Amelia's approval. Based on this, Chen Luo definitely could not let her go. Not only Amelia, but also the two remaining elders of the vampire clan, Victor and Marcus. The former not only has a deep hatred with the werewolf leader Lucian, even for Serena, he has long on Chen Luo's must-kill list. As for the latter, for the rewards of the system, the ancestor of the vampire family must die. After removing all the three elders, it will undoubtedly be much easier for Chen Luo to subdue the vampire forces here. What's more, he now has the help of Craven, the agent in charge, coupled with the power he originally possessed. In Chen Luo's view, the power of the vampire side has long been in his pocket. As for the remaining werewolf side, Chen Luo is also certain to subdue Lucian, the leader of the werewolves. Chen Luo's strength has completely disregarded him. After realizing that no one could stop Chen Luo's progress, Craven was in awe, and at the same time, he couldn't help secretly rejoicing as he glanced at Erica, who was beside Chen Luo from time to time. With the relationship between Chen Luo and Erica, even if he had targeted each other before, at least he didn't have to worry about his own life. But if Chen Luo wants to maintain his current position after he takes power, it will undoubtedly be very difficult for such a situation. To say he doesn't want to change would be an absolute lie. Therefore, even for the sake of his future status, he must show something. And just when Craven thought this way, finally, the group of Deathwalkers sent out by him returned to the castle again, and as soon as they came back, they brought back a piece of news that stunned everyone. What? Elder Amelia, she was attacked by a werewolf and was killed? Just when everyone in the castle was shocked by Amelia's death. At the same time, in the direction of the port, inside the werewolf base camp, with the return of a group of werewolves who were originally sent to attack Amelia, the blood of the elder Amelia was successfully handed over to Lucian. Looking at the blood sample in his hand, Lucian's face was full of unstoppable excitement. His body began to tremble slightly, as if he remembered something. His eyes were full of cold and piercing killing intent. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Soon, Victor. Soon I'll have enough strength to avenge you." After saying this, Lucian turned around and handed the blood in his hand to Vaughn beside him, and said in a deep voice, "Vaughn, you can start the experiment. Make the ghost wolf serum as soon as possible. I can't wait to try the power of the ghost wolf. Leave it to me, leader. It won't take long for the ghost wolf serum to be successfully produced." After receiving the blood sample, Vaughn pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and replied with the same excitement on his face. As a scientist, what could excite him more than creating a brand new species? When he thought of the brand new species that was about to be born in his own hands, he couldn't control his excitement. Driven by such motivation, Vaughn immediately came to his laboratory and began to conduct experiments. Take out the blood sample of Michael that had been prepared a long time ago, put the vampire blood in his hand into the container and mix it together. After a series of complicated operations, finally, under his expectant gaze, two different blood gradually began to integrate it. The integration speed of the two is very fast, and it took less than 10 minutes to successfully integrate the Gestalt. After seeing that this step has been completed, Vaughn kept moving his hands, and then he finished integrating and put all the blood into a test tube, then assembled it on the injection gun, and then pushed open the door of the laboratory, and came to in front of Lucian, who couldn't wait. "Boss, the ghost wolf serum has been made. Just inject this dose of serum into your body and integrate with the werewolf blood in your body, and you will be able to metamorphosis into a real ghost wolf." Hashtag FL+F equals taking the injection gun handed over by Vaughn. Lucian's eyes flickered slightly, and he asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure?" Chapter 118. Part 3. Is there any danger in injecting the fast serum shop? Don't worry, regarding safety, I have done experiments before. There will be absolutely no problems. Vaughn replied confidently. Then he seemed to have thought of something, paused, with a look of uncertainty on his face, and continued, "However, according to my calculations, although this serum has a great possibility of improving the strength of the injection target, but the real effect has not been tested in detail. After all, there is only this sample of the blood sample of the elder, so it cannot be wasted casually. If the leader is not at ease, we can catch other vampires first, draw their blood and make some serum again, and then inject other werewolves, and then we can talk about it after seeing the effect." "Need not already." Lucian waved his hand. Looking at the serum in his hand, a strange gleam flashed in his eyes. Since there is no danger, it doesn't matter whoever gets the injection first. And there is only 1 day left before the awakening ceremony. We don't have time to wait any longer. Because the awakening ceremony will only be performed once every 300 years. And during the beginning of the ceremony, because the original elders of Suxing were about to fall into a deep sleep again, and the elders who woke up later needed help. A period of time to restore strength. The elders who haven't absorbed enough blood are undoubtedly at the weakest stage at the moment. Therefore, if they want to take revenge on the vampires, this is the best way. Opportunity. Lucian will never miss such an opportunity. Therefore, he has no time to find other people to conduct experiments, and there is no danger after injecting this serum, so he has nothing to worry about. Under the watchful eye, the injection was selected. With the injection of the ghost wolf serum into the body, Lucian didn't feel anything at first, but after a while, with a hot feeling like a fire coming from the body, Lucian couldn't help but roared in pain. Accompanied by his roar, the ghost wolf serum in his body quickly flowed throughout his body, integrating with the werewolf blood in Lucian's body, and then forming a new form of synthesis. The genes were gradually reshaped, and the bones, muscles, and even the blood of the whole body were all undergone huge amounts of modification. The density of bones and muscles has become more and more astonishing. The defense power has been greatly enhanced, and the weakness of the werewolf fear of silver products has been gradually eliminated, and the blood of the vampire on his body during this time. The weakness of being afraid of the sun gradually began to disappear. A steady stream of constantly strength began to emerge from the body, and involuntarily, Lucian's body began to undergo huge amounts of changes. The body shape gradually changed to that of a werewolf, and the originally pitch-black hair gradually shone with a layer of silver light, making it look more and more soft and graceful. The original height of about 2 meters has gradually grown to a height of about 3 meters. The sharp claws at the ends of the limbs have become sharper, and the fangs have grown several times again. Like sharp daggers, it seems that even the steel has been bitten to pieces. The muscles all over his body are swollen, and he looks full of strength. Compared with the previous werewolf form, after transforming into a ghost wolf, Lucian's physical fitness has improved several times. Yu, compared to before, is no longer at the same level. Feeling the power surging in his body at this moment, Lucian's eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement, and he raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl. Huge amounts of howl instantly spread throughout the entire port. It has attracted the attention of countless people. After realizing the success of the experiment, Lucian came to the special training ground to feel the changes in his body carefully. After several hours of testing, when Lucian walked out again during the training ground, his face was already covered with a confident smile. Seeing Lucian walk out from the training ground, a group of werewolves who had been waiting for a long time surrounded the warehouse, and the excitement on their faces couldn't be stopped. "Boss, since you have turned into transformation, when are we going to attack those vampire bastards?" "Yeah, boss, I can't wait to rip those bastards' throats. I'm going to kill those bloody vampires." Looking at the eager crowd around him, Lucian waved his hands and was about to speak. However, at this moment, not far away, Vaughn walked towards this side quickly, came to Lucian, and whispered something to him. "Craven wants to see me?" Hearing this, Lucian was taken aback for a moment, and then quickly reacted, with an even wider smile on his face. "That's good too. It just so happens that I have something to look for him too. Then let's meet him." Although after gaining the power of the Ghost Wolf, he already has a lot of confidence in revenge against Victor, but since he has Craven as a partner, he can reduce the risk a little. Insurance is also a good county. Therefore, thinking of this, he immediately agreed. Chapter 119, Part 1. Just after Lucian promised to meet Craven. The other side. After getting the news, Cleven didn't dare to neglect in the slightest, and quickly found Chen Luo, who was resting in the bedroom, and began to report the situation. "Master Chen Luo, I have just received the news that Sean has promised to meet me. Regarding the request of the two to meet, there is no doubt that this was also proposed by Chen Luo to Craven. It has been so many days since he came here, and it is time to meet the werewolf leader. As for why you want to meet with each other, the reason is also very simple. Since the awakening ceremony will be held in one day, it is time for the werewolf race to subdue it. And if his expectations are not bad, the current Lucian should have successfully transformed into a new form of ghost wolf without any accidents, and this moment should be the time when his self-confidence is at its peak. If the other party's confidence is defeated at this time, coupled with the conditions he promised, by then, the chances of subduing the other party will undoubtedly be greatly increased." Thinking of this, Chen Luo couldn't help but look forward to the next meeting. And when Chen Luo was thinking about the next plan, beside him, Craven's face kept flashing, and he was also thinking secretly. If his predictions were correct, the purpose of Chen Luo's trip this time should be to subdue those werewolves. Although he had expected this scene, when it actually happened, he still couldn't help feeling a little anxious. As an old enemy who has confronted werewolves for hundreds of years, even though he has cooperated with werewolves now, as a vampire, he still has a natural resistance to the werewolf race. Most importantly, when the werewolf clan really joined Chen Luo's command. Since the werewolf clan was born to surpass the power of vampires, Craven couldn't help but worry a little. General value? If it is really as he imagined, then the status of the vampire clan in Europe may be in jeopardy in the future. For this point, Cleven, who is now a high-ranking vampire family, definitely cannot accept it. After all, this is related to his own power, and he will not just watch the werewolf family ride on his head like this. No, something has to be done. What are you thinking? As if seeing his anxiety, Chen Luo whispered thoughtfully, "Craven, you don't need to think too much about the next thing. I won't keep you here in the future. When I go back later, you have to go to New York with me." Gently tapping the table with his knuckles, Chen Luo couldn't see any expression on his face, and said calmly, "Craven, 677, your ability is good, so I will give you such a chance. The property on the side will be handed over to you to take care of. I hope you will not let me down." As the real big steward of the European vampire side for hundreds of years, besides the three elders, he undoubtedly has the greatest power. On weekdays, all matters of the family, big and small, have to go through his hands, and being able to do so here, he has managed his family in an orderly manner for hundreds of years, which has proved his ability to some extent. There is no doubt that although Craven is not a talent in combat, his talent in management cannot be ignored. And this is the most scarce existence in Chen Luo today. Apart from ability in management, she definitely has the influence of Erica. So, for her real brother, Chen Luo doesn't mind giving him another chance. And the reason why he wanted to bring Craven to New York was that apart from the lack of a manager in New York, there was also the reason that he could monitor him nearby. From Chen Luo's point of view, although Craven has great abilities, correspondingly, he also has a lot of small thoughts, which can be seen from his daring to deceive Victor. So in order to curb his other thought, the best way is to bring him to my side to take care of him. Chen Luo has this self-confidence, and with him as a shock, Craven will never dare to give birth to other thoughts, and can only do things for him wholeheartedly, and this is what Chen Luo wants to see the most. After hearing Chen Luo's words, Craven was already dazzled by the great news of the day, and his face was overjoyed. He really didn't expect that he could be so reused by Chen Luo. You must know that New York is different from Europe and the North Bear Country. It is Chen Luo's true headquarters there, and the vampire forces there are stronger than the other two places combined. If he can become the manager there, then his power will undoubtedly be further enhanced. Although with his wisdom, he quickly figured out the reason why Chen Luo would do this, but he didn't care much about it. After seeing Chen Luo's overwhelming power, today's Craven has long been in awe of Chen Luo, and he doesn't dare to resist him at all. Coupled with the relationship between Chen Luo and his sister, it can be said that in his heart, he has long regarded himself as a member of the Chen Luo family. As long as he can guarantee absolute loyalty, then does he still need to worry about the threat brought by Chen Luo? Thinking of this, Craven's eyes flashed, and he immediately made a decision. Chapter 119, Part 2. When he came to Chen Luo and knelt down on one knee, Craven bowed his head respectfully and said in a deep voice, "Lord Chen Luo, from now on, Craven will offer you my loyalty." Chen Luo was not at all surprised by Craven's actions. He nodded and accepted the other party's allegiance. Then, looking at Craven, who had officially joined him, Chen Luo's eyes flashed, as if thinking of something. He raised his head, looked at him with great interest, and asked slowly, "Craven, you should understand the purpose of my next meeting with Lucian, right? How about it? You have known each other for hundreds of years. Do you have any way to make Lucian surrender to me?" Regarding this, Craven obviously had a plan in mind, and said with confidence on his face, "Master Chen Luo, I think there is only one best way to make Lucian surrender, and that is to hand over Victor to the other party." Lucian's hatred for the vampires is mostly on Victor. As long as he can personally solving Victor will greatly increase the probability of Lucian's submission. After a pause, Craven continued, "However, the werewolves are naturally warlike, and only the stronger ones can make them truly surrender. So I'm afraid Master Chen Luo will need to show them their strength at that time. Help the werewolf surrender." Regarding the hatred between Lucian and Victor, as one of the witnesses at that time, Craven obviously knew it very well. If Victor hadn't personally executed his daughter, who was also Lucian's beloved, in front of Lucian, and instead let the two walk together, the werewolves would still be the most loyal servants of the vampires now. It is precisely because he understands this that Craven is also very confident. As long as Victor is handed over to Lucian, coupled with Chen Luo's overwhelming power, the other party will definitely have a high chance of choosing to surrender. After hearing Craven's approach, Chen Luo also nodded non-committally. The other party's method was exactly the same as what he thought. Originally, he thought that the other party would have something to add, but now it seems that he thought too much. However, although Chen Luo has already made a decision in his heart, he has not forgotten that when Serena was a human being, the death of her family was also related to Victor, and this is something he has to consider. But how to deal with it? Chen Luo already had a corresponding solution in his mind. Let's see how this trip turns out. With a flash of light in his eyes, Chen Luo raised his head to look at Craven, and said softly, "It's time. We should set off." In a huge warehouse in the port area, as the headquarters of the werewolf clan, today, it ushered in two unusual guests. Chen Luo and Chen Luo walked along the way. Along the way, I don't know how many pairs of malicious eyes kept looking at the two of them. Looking at the obviously different clothes of the two of them, they obviously didn't fit in with this slum. If they can succeed robbing two people, the money they get may be enough for them to be cool for a long time. As the gathering place of the city's slums, there are also all kinds of lawless people of all kinds here. Robbery in the street is the most common thing here. It is precisely because they know the danger here that there are usually no rich people here. That's why there was such a big commotion after seeing Chen Luo and the two of them. However, just as they were about to make a move, the next moment, as dozens of burly men with fierce eyes came to the two of them and surrounded the two of them, the surrounding people suddenly, Sayaj, were startled. Immediately withdrew his sight. As an old fritter who has lived here for a long time, he is very clear about the largest local snake in this area, that is, the underground forces created by Lucian. After seeing the face, everyone thought of retreating. After all, no matter how ruthless they are, it is only for ordinary people. For the werewolf race whose power is far beyond ordinary people, the other human forces in the port are completely worthless. Even if due to various considerations, they cannot expose their real bodies in front of humans at will, but even in human form, there is a huge amount of gap in their physical fitness. In addition, because of the blessing of Vaughn, a scientist, the equipment in their hands is much stronger than other forces. Therefore, after a period of bloody cleansing, everyone has recognized who is the boss in this area. In the face of the largest local snake force in the port, everyone also has self-knowledge and retreats one after another. Chen Luo and Chen Luo didn't pay too much attention to the actions of these people around them. If it's okay if they mess with him, then he doesn't mind giving them a ride. But since they've retreated, he doesn't want to waste time on these people. Now in Chen Luo's eyes, the only way to subdue Lucian, it's his #1 priority. Soon, Chen Luo and Chen Luo came to the warehouse, which was the base camp of werewolves, under the escort of the werewolf troops around. Just as soon as they entered the door, Chen Luo saw a person walking towards them quickly. The visitor was different from the other werewolves he had seen. His stature was relatively thin, and his height of about 1. Chapter 119. Part 3. 8 meters was not considered short in the eyes of ordinary people. Down, but it looks so abrupt. Although the stature is relatively thin, the opponent's aura is completely different. Compared with the bloodthirsty and brutality of other werewolves, the opponent's aura is much more solid and heavy, and his appearance among all werewolves, his handsome face, also gave him a different charm out of thin air. Seeing the person coming, Chen Luo also faintly guessed the identity of the person coming. As if to verify his guess, Lucian came in front of the two of them. When he saw Chen Luo beside Craven, his brows furrowed instantly, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Through the unusual positions of the two, as well as Cleven's respectful expression, Lucian naturally noticed that among the two, who was the real leader? Status. When he learned that Chen Luo and Chen Luo had arrived, he thought that Chen Luo was just a subordinate brought by Craven. But now it seems that the situation is completely opposite. You must know that after Amelia's death, the awakening ceremony has not yet been officially held. Among the vampires, Craven should have the greatest power. Under such circumstances, he actually showed such respect to the person in front of him. Seeing this, Lucian couldn't help being arrogantly curious about Chen Luo. Craven, why don't you introduce this one? With a smile on his face, Lucian looked at Chen Luo thoughtfully and said slowly, if I'm right, I'm afraid it's this person who you came to find me this time. Bar. Why, looking at you like this, you have changed to a new owner, right? Hearing this, Chen Luo's eyes lit up slightly, and he also had a new understanding of the intelligence of the werewolf leader Lucian. While secretly admiring in his heart, Chen Luo became much more sure about the purpose of this trip. How could Cleven on the side not be able to hear the meaning of mocking himself in the other party's tone? But he was not angry at all, and with an inexplicable smile on his face, he said softly, "Don't worry, Lucian, soon, you will be like me." Hearing this, the smile on Lucian's face stagnated, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Before he could speak, Levin's voice sounded again. "You are right, I do have a new master. Now, let me introduce you again." As he spoke, Craven bowed respectfully in the direction of Chen Luo, bowed deeply, his face was full of reverence, and he said in a fanatical voice, "This is the current ruler of the underground forces in New York and the North Bear Country. We deserve to be the strongest among our vampire clan. He is honored by the world as a butcher, Chen Luo Daping." As soon as these words came out, the faces of everyone around, including Lucian, changed dramatically, and a hint of disbelief flashed in their eyes. How could they not know the name of the butcher? That is the terrifying existence that the entire underground world has been terrified of recently. In just a few months, according to incomplete statistics, the number of people who died at the hands of this butcher has reached a terrifying number of close to 10,000. It's fierce. Even though Lucian has lived for hundreds of years, the total number of people he killed in these hundreds of years is probably not half of Chen Luo's. Let alone Chen Luo's terrifying record, it was only obtained in a few battles, and they all defeated tens of thousands of people with their own strength. This kind of strength is far beyond what ordinary people can imagine. Recalling Chen Luo's series of victories, even the extremely belligerent werewolf felt a little terrified in his heart at the moment. There was a hint of fear in his eyes when he looked at Chen Luo, and his body was slightly terrified. Micro began to tremble. Lucian's face suddenly became extremely serious. Even though he has obtained brand new power now, he still can't guarantee how strong he can be in front of this legendary butcher. Odds. But fortunately, as the leader of the werewolf clan, he wouldn't lose his composure in front of Chen Luo. He suppressed the shock in his heart and looked straight at Chen Luo. Lucian asked in a deep voice, "Then, I don't know why Mr. Chen Luo came to us?" Facing his question, Chen Luo slowly raised a smile on his face, as if chatting about homework, and said with a relaxed face, "Actually, it's nothing. I just became interested in the werewolf family, so I just wanted to come here to ask. I don't know if you have any intention to join. What about my subordinates?" As soon as these words came out, everyone's expressions changed. Chapter 120. Part 1. Lucian's face instantly became extremely ugly. Looking directly into Chen Luo's eyes, he asked in a deep voice, "Your Excellency Chen Luo, what do you mean by this?" Chen Luo looked at him with some doubts and said, Did I not understand enough? It's very simple. I appreciate the fighting power of the werewolves, so I give you such an opportunity to join my team. Family, surrender to me from now on. I assure you, as long as you are willing to serve me, then you will no longer be hunted down by the vampires, and you will be able to get the same status as them. In the future, whether it's Europe, North Bear Country, or even New York, as long as it belongs to my sphere of influence, you can choose freely. I think after so many years, it shouldn't be good for you to be trapped here all the time. How about it? Do you want to consider my offer? Chen Luo's words were full of temptation, and Lucien didn't mention what his reaction was. But after hearing this, the eyes of the other werewolves couldn't help showing longing. As Chen Luo said, in these hundreds of years, they have been busy avoiding the pursuit of vampires all day long on the land of Europe. And because of the superiority in numbers and equipment, they don't say whether they can beat each other, or even escape from this land. The range of survival is constantly being reduced, and now they can only hide in the port. In the slum area, avoiding the pursuit from the vampire side, they have long been impatient with such a life. If it weren't for the leader Lucien who has been restraining them, with the fierce and violent character of the werewolves, I am afraid that they would have desperately fought against the vampires, and then stepped into the fate of extinction. It is precisely because of being driven to a desperate situation by the vampires that the surviving werewolves are so desperate and want to fight to the death at the beginning of the awakening ceremony. If they miss this opportunity, they have no confidence that they can continue to persist for 300 years. Don't be exterminated. Although they have gained brand new strength through experiments, after all, they have a huge amount of gap with the opponent in terms of numbers, and their strength has not reached the point where Chen Luo can ignore the gap in numbers. Therefore, for the next in this decisive battle, they actually set out with the determination to die. But now that there is an opportunity to get rid of the fate of genocide and live a better life than before, how can the werewolves who have been poor for hundreds of years resist such a temptation? Regarding the thoughts of his subordinates, Lucien naturally knew it well. In all fairness, if Chen Luo's words are true, then joining the opponent's command is a good choice for the werewolves. After all, what kind of prestige Chen Luo has in the underground world now, he must understand this. With a strong man like Chen Luo sitting in town, it can be said that they are undoubtedly guaranteed in terms of safety, and coupled with the terrifying financial resources of the Chen Luo family, which is as high as hundreds of billions. If they want to improve the quality of life of their werewolves, it is undoubtedly also a breeze. Although he understands the various benefits of joining Chen Luo's command, Lucien also has his own concerns. One is the issue of the reputation of Chen Luo originally, although so far he has not heard of Chen Luo's deeds of reneging on his promises, and there are no bad rumors about the forces under his command. But this does not mean that he can trust each other completely. After all, the fact that Chen Luo is a vampire can't be changed. As a member of vampires, whether he can maintain the fairness of werewolves, a race that is very different from vampires, is a question mark. There is another point, which is also the most important point. Thinking of this, Lucien's gaze unconsciously turned to Craven, who was beside Chen Luo, and he began to think secretly. If Craven also joined Chen Luo's command, would the European vampire forces have also surrendered to the other party? If so, then his chances of revenge would be slim. He never forgot why he led the werewolves to fight against vampires and fought against them for hundreds of years. If it wasn't for revenge on Victor, he might have lost his persistence. Motivation. Now, even though he has obtained the power of the Ghost Wolf, if Chen Luo takes action, it will undoubtedly be as difficult as heaven for him to successfully avenge Victor. However, just as his hesitation was undecided, Chen Luo's voice sounded again. Lucien, Craven has already told me about the grievances between you and Victor. Seeing Lucien, who came back to his senses and raised his head to look at him, Chen Luo outlined a smile on his face and slowly said, "As a reward for joining the werewolf clan, I can hand over Victor to you." After saying this, Chen Luo's face instantly became indifferent. His aura was fully opened, and the terrifying murderous aura overflowed crazily, and the surrounding air seemed to freeze, incomparably heavy. Chapter 120. Part 2. Feeling the terrifying pressure like a mountain, everyone's foreheads were covered with cold sweat, their hearts were shocked, and a trace of panic flashed in their eyes without concealment, and a shadow of death enveloped everyone in an instant. But if you still disagree, don't blame me for being rude. Surrender or die. You choose. Quiet. Deathly silence. After listening to Chen Luo's declaration, everyone kept silent and bowed their heads in silence. Although they didn't speak, the eyes of everyone gathered on Lucien at the same time, waiting for his answer. Apparently, these werewolves have put their future destiny in the hands of the leader. Chen Luo, who was watching the whole process from the side, was also slightly moved by everyone's choice, and there is no need to raise the importance of Lucien again. Up a notch. Since the other party can get the support of so many werewolves, it can be seen that it has prestige in their hearts. So if they can subdue the other party, it will not be difficult to get the loyalty of the werewolves. But if the other party refuses, then Chen Luo will not be merciless. Facing the forces that do not choose to obey him, He always has only one choice. Chen Luo really can't believe that in this werewolf clan, everyone is still devoted to Lucien. If that's the case, then he will personally send them off with respect. For the trust of his own people, Lucien naturally received it, and while his heart was moved, the responsibility on his shoulders seemed to be as heavy as a mountain. He knew in his heart that his next decision would probably determine the life and death of the werewolves. Thinking of the consequences he was about to face, he couldn't help cheering up and thinking twice. After a while, Lucien raised his head, looked at Chen Luo solemnly, spoke slowly, and made his proposal. If you can really hand over Victor to me as agreed, the werewolves are willing to surrender. But before that, Mr. Chen Luo, you have to defeat me first. After all, only the strongest can be the king of our werewolf clan. Hearing this, Chen Luo looked at the other party expressionlessly for a while, and then, his whole body retreated. A smile of interest appeared on his face again, and he nodded slowly. This is a good tradition. Then, I accept your challenge. After that, Chen Luo turned his head and looked around. As if he had thought of something, he pointed to his feet and said, "That's all right. The position under my feet shall prevail. No matter what means you use, as long as you can push me back one step, then you will win this duel. If you can win, I will leave immediately. Meanwhile, Victor will still be at your disposal. But if I fail, you will be our king from now on." Looking straight at Chen Luo, Lucien said calmly, without any emotion on his face. Although there was no expression on his face at the moment, after hearing what Chen Luo said, he was already very angry in his heart. When he thought about it, no matter how powerful Chen Luo was, it was impossible for him to remain indifferent to his attack. After all, he has gained new power now, and his strength has increased several times compared to before. Compared with before, it can be said to be a world of difference. After the previous test, he clearly knows what kind of strength he has reached now. Even if he may not be Chen Luo's opponent, the gap should not be too obvious. Therefore, facing Chen Luo's arrogant behavior, while Lucien was secretly angry, he had already made plans in his heart. He will not have any temptations for a while, and at the beginning, he must use his full strength. Let Chen Luo experience the terrifying power of ghost wolves. Not only Lucien, but all the werewolves present who had never seen Chen Luo's attack also showed anger visible to the naked eye, obviously very dissatisfied with Chen Luo's actions. Looking at the expressions of the people around him, Cleven on the side didn't say a word, and sneered secretly in his heart. For him who had seen how terrifying Chen Luo was, Craven was full of confidence. In his opinion, the moment Lucien accepted Chen Luo's proposal, the battle had already come to an end. Thinking of working with these werewolves in the near future, Craven felt a little complicated and difficult to understand. Afterwards, everyone gradually retreated tens of meters, leaving enough room for Chen Luo and Chen Luo to fight. And in the center of the field, Chen Luo stood in place, motionless, looked at Lucien not far away, smiled and waved, saying, "Okay, now you can attack. Just use whatever you have and let me see, as the Wolf King, what strength you have." "Rat. You'll see it soon." Lucien looked serious and slowly took off his shirt, standing in front of Chen Luo with his upper body. The muscles all over his body tensed instantly, accompanied by a deep roar, and gradually, drastic changes occurred in Lucien's body. The originally thin body swelled up in an instant, reaching a height of nearly 3 meters. Silver-gray hair emerged from the body and wrapped around the sturdy body. Like a small dagger, it is extremely sharp, as if it can easily bite through steel. Chapter 120. Part 3. The terrifying animal pupils looked straight at Chen Luo, let out a deep roar from the throat, and the momentum of his body soared several times, looking from a distance. It's like a biological weapon specially born for killing city. This is the brand new power that Lucien obtained after combining the Ghost Wolf Serum. After successfully transforming into the Ghost Wolf form, feeling the powerful power emerging from his body at this moment, Lucien's heart has long been filled with confidence. The original fear of Chen Luo has long disappeared. With such power, even the legendary butcher cannot be his opponent. Let you experience my power. Thinking of this, Lucien didn't have any hesitation. He moved his feet and ran towards Chen Luo. Roar! In the blink of an eye, Lucien's figure had disappeared in place. In less than a second, he crossed a distance of tens of meters and came to Chen Luo in an instant. Raise your right hand high. Long his sharp claws flashed several cold lights in the air, and then grabbed Chen Luo heavily. With his current strength, even if it is a steel plate standing in front of him, Lucien is confident that he can leave marks on it, even if steel is like this, let alone a mere steel plate. Flesh and blood. Zero facing Lucien's attack that was so close at hand. Chen Luo seemed completely unresponsive, and didn't even make any defensive moves, just watching the attack come. The next moment, as Lucien's attack landed heavily on Chen Luo's body, a piercing sound rang out, and then, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Chen Luo slid across Chen Luo's body. At the moment of Luo's body, The sharp claws of Lucian's right hand were all broken and scattered all over the ground. After receiving this blow, the clothes on Chen Luo's body were already torn into pieces by the opponent's sharp claws, but Chen Luo's body seemed to be as silk through the clothes that had turned into rags. As if he had not been harmed, he appeared in front of everyone intact. Looking at Chen Luo's body wrapped in clothes, he looked like a god. The muscles all over his body seemed to be poured with steel. Without any defense, after receiving Lucian's blow head-on, there were no scars on his body. The sharp claws shattered and broke. Such an exaggerated defensive power made everyone's faces look shocked. Even Lucian is the same. Although he couldn't speak after transforming into a ghost wolf form, his thoughts at the moment could be seen from his shocked eyes. Regarding the power of his blow just now, Lucian is very clear. If an ordinary vampire receives such a blow from him, he will be torn apart instantly. However, when this kind of attack landed on Chen Luo's body, it didn't have any effect on it. This kind of body strength was like real steel. Is this the power of a butcher? Even if it was just a single round of fighting, Lucian, who was full of confidence, had already been greatly frustrated, and his heart was shrouded in a shadow. Looking at Chen Luo's expressionless face at this moment, he couldn't unsurprisingly. An ominous premonition emerged in his heart. Looks like you're done. Chen Luo nodded slightly, as if to praise. Then he slowly raised his right hand and clenched it into a fist. Since you gave me a claw, then as a reward, you should also receive a punch from me. Boom. Accompanied by this voice, the next moment, Chen Luo's right fist disappeared in front of everyone's eyes, and then hit Lucian's abdomen heavily. A dull voice sounded in everyone's ears. Then, under the force of Chen Luo's huge strength, Lucian flew upside down in an instant. After flying for tens of meters, he smashed the wall behind him into a deep hole before finally stopping. A painful roar sounded, and Lucian fell powerlessly to the ground, struggling to get up. But no matter how hard he tried, his body seemed to be disobedient, motionless. Move. And the abdomen hit by Chen Luo was already pierced by a huge amount of blood hole at this moment. A large amount of blood continuously flowed out from the hole, instantly dyeing the ground red. Looking at his miserable appearance at this moment, everyone around was shocked. They couldn't believe it. They just suffered Chen Luo's punch, and the king in their hearts fell to the ground, unable to fight anymore. Seeing Chen Luo standing with his fists closed not far away, everyone's eyes were filled with awe. Chapter 121. Part 1. Unlike the shock of other werewolves, Craven was not surprised when he saw Lucian, who was seriously injured and fell to the ground not far away. After all, he had seen the scene when Chen Luo was 1 against 10,000. After seeing Chen Luo's invincible strength, he had already made up his mind about today's challenge, even before it even started. Not to mention Lucian alone. Even if all the werewolves present were combined, Chen Luo might not be able to hold on for a few minutes. If they really dared to resist, the place would already be bleeding like a river by now. But now it seems that everything is going as Craven expected. Facing Chen Luo, the legendary butcher, everyone has no intention of resisting at all. It seems that this werewolf clan will change hands starting today. Although he had expected it a long time ago, after actually seeing this scene, Craven couldn't restrain his heart and 593 surged. After the werewolves chose to join Chen Luo's command, in his opinion, within a few days, the European vampires would also be conquered by Chen Luo and become a member of the Chen Luo family. In this way, the original situation where the 3 major vampire forces in the world were at the top of their game undoubtedly no longer existed. After destroying the 2 vampire empires one after another, as long as all the vampire forces in America are unified, Chen Luo will undoubtedly become the real king of the vampire clan. At that time, the power in Chen Luo's hands will undoubtedly expand to an unprecedented level. Even in the entire Dark World, he is already qualified to become one of the top underground forces, like Mutant Brotherhood, Hellfire Club, occupying a pivotal position status. Thinking that he would be able to see such a future in the near future as a member of the Chen Luo family, for a while, Craven was too excited to hold back. The other side, Chen Luo remained motionless, looking at Lucian, who was lying on the ground in the distance, and said in a deep voice, "How is it? Do you want to continue fighting?" Hearing that, not far away Lucian, who had returned to human form at some point, lowered his head dejectedly, looking at the bloody hole in his abdomen that was blasted by Chen Luo's punch, feeling powerless in his heart. Although this kind of injury can't cause fatal damage to him who has become a ghost wolf, but after feeling Chen Luo's punch, he already knows the huge gap between the two. That is an absolutely insurmountable gap. The excitement after becoming a ghost wolf has already cooled down. After seeing Chen Luo's overwhelming strength, Lucian, who was at the moment, no longer had the thought of resistance in his heart. The only thing left in his heart was full of Chen Luo. With difficulty, he raised his head and turned to look around. When he saw the eyes of other people looking at Chen Luo at this moment, Lucian had already made a decision in his heart. No need, I lost. Feeling that his injury had improved, Lucian stood up with difficulty, and then came to Chen Luo step by step, knelt down on one knee, deeply lowered his originally high head, and a deep voice sounded. From today onwards, you are the king of our werewolf clan. We will serve you for the rest of our lives. At the same time, all the werewolves around Chen Luo also knelt down on one knee, and a voice sounded. King. Huge amounts of sound echoed through the vast warehouse. Including Cleven, everyone's eyes were focused on Chen Luo. Their eyes were full of awe, but their hearts were also full of excitement. After seeing Chen Luo's terrifying strength, everyone no longer had the slightest resistance to joining Chen Luo's command. On the contrary, in their hearts, they felt a sense of peace that they had never had before. For hundreds of years, although the werewolves have been fighting fiercely with the vampires, due to the huge disadvantages in numbers and equipment, they spend almost every day hiding in Tibet, mentally tense all the time, guarding against external dangers. Although in such an environment, they quickly became elite werewolf fighters one by one. Years of life and death fights have made them rapidly improve both in terms of survival experience and fighting skills, but such a non-stop fighting life, even a werewolf who is naturally warlike will have a tired day. No matter how tired they are, facing the pursuit of the vampires, they still have to brace themselves to deal with it. After all, this is a fight for their own survival, and they dare not slack off in the slightest. However, the life of hiding in Tibet all the year round, as well as the tension of life hanging by a thread at that moment, made the werewolves face huge amounts of pressure. However, such pressure disappeared without a trace after they chose to join Chen Luo's command. After witnessing the strength of this legendary butcher and the power in Chen Luo's hands, the werewolves couldn't help but be full of hope for their future life. Even if Craven chooses to join Chen Luo's command now, even if there is no movement on the European vampire side, with the help of Craven, it will be a matter of time before they choose to join. In this way, the werewolves no longer need to face the pursuit of the vampires, and their own safety is also guaranteed. Chapter 121, Part 2. Thinking of this, everyone was shrouded in a sense of security that they had never had before, and they were even more convinced by Chen Luo. After seeing the choices of the werewolves, Chen Luo was also in a good mood, with a satisfied smile on his face. After successfully achieving the goal of his trip, Chen Luo did not leave in a hurry and let the others disperse. At the moment, only Chen Luo, Craven, and Lucian were present at the scene. Looking at Lucian, Chen Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, and he spoke slowly. Then, according to my promise to you, when the awakening ceremony begins tomorrow, I will send Victor to your minister. Hearing this, Lucian, who was a little nervous about whether Chen Luo would really keep his promise, suddenly showed excitement on his face and looked at Chen Luo with gratitude. However, before he could say anything, he was interrupted by Chen Luo's next sentence. But before that, you have to do one thing for me first. Regarding this, Lucian didn't have the slightest hesitation and immediately nodded in agreement. Yes, Wang, I don't know what you need me to do for you in 4.6. Facing Lucian's question, Chen Luo didn't answer. Instead, he slowly turned his head and looked at Craven on the other side with a smile on his face. Craven, I think it's time for you to tell Serena the truth about that incident. Hearing this, Craven was taken aback for a moment, and then immediately understood what Chen Luo was thinking. He didn't dare to be negligent and nodded quickly. I see. Chen Luo is a man of heaven. Afterwards, the three discussed the next step again before Chen Luo and Craven turned and left. Now that Victor's fate has been decided, it is necessary to make good use of his death. At the very least, I can't let that hate me. Sitting in the car, recalling that cold and beautiful face, Chen Luo sighed slightly. Chapter 122, Part 1. Early the next morning, Chen Luo approached Serena early on, and then told her the news he had prepared earlier. What? That human has returned? The werewolves didn't do anything to him? After hearing the news from Chen Luo, Serena was also surprised. After the previous investigation, she found that the human named Michael was the target of the werewolf. In order to find out what the other party's purpose was, she and Chen Luo made a special trip, but found nothing. But she didn't expect that after only 2 days, the other party would be released by those werewolves. Such a situation could not help but attract her attention. After bowing her head and thinking for a while, Serena's face became a little dignified. Under normal circumstances, any human being who falls into the hands of werewolves will never have a chance of survival. But since Michael was able to return to his residence intact, in her opinion, there is only one possible explanation. That is, this human being has been assimilated into a werewolf. Hunting werewolves is also the responsibility of a Daywalker, and Serena was also a little curious about why the other party was targeted by werewolves. So after thinking for a short while, she suddenly made a decision. Chris, let's go over there and investigate again. Serena's words fell right into Chen Luo's arms, and he had no reason to refuse, and immediately nodded in agreement. Then the two set off immediately and drove towards their destination. On the way, looking at Serena's flawless side face, Chen Luo's heart moved. As if thinking of something, he asked curiously, By the way, Serena, I heard from Craven that you are the adopted daughter of Elder Victor, right? Can you tell me about it? How did you meet? Hearing this, Serena was silent for a moment. Her face became a little gloomy, and she slowly said, "That's right. If Victor hadn't saved me and transformed me into a vampire, I wouldn't have survived until now. Hundreds of years ago, the village where I lived was attacked by werewolves, including my parents, who were slaughtered by werewolves. I was able to temporarily escape from werewolves because my father hid me in an underground secret room early. Hunt. However, just when the werewolves were about to find me, Victor found them in time. After killing all the werewolves who attacked our village, he found me. It was also from that day that I began to walk in this world as a vampire." Serena slowly told Chen Luo her story. Although her face looked calm, Chen Luo could still faintly feel the hatred for werewolves in her heart, and for Vic, who was her savior. So much gratitude for that. Sensing her emotions, Chen Luo sighed inwardly. "For this girl who has been kept in the dark for hundreds of years, my heart is full of pity, and at the same time, for Victor, the culprit, my heart is full of killing intent." Regarding the incident Serena experienced, Craven was at the scene at the time, and he watched how Victor brutally slaughtered all men, women, and children in the village, leaving only Serena alive. As for why Serena's life was spared, the reason is also very simple, because from the moment he saw Serena, Victor remembered the daughter who was killed by him at that time. Because the two are somewhat similar in appearance, and because Serena knows nothing about the truth here because she was hidden by her father, Victor decided to spare her life and she adopted her as her adopted daughter. Since then, Serena has spent hundreds of years in Victor's lies. In order to repay her adoptive father and avenge her parents, she has been hunting down werewolves as a member of the Daywalkers and serving the vampires. Contribute your strength? And Serena's miserable life was all caused by Victor. Therefore, after learning the truth from Craven, Chen Luo made a decision at that time. Only by giving the other party the most cruel death can he calm down the killing intent in his heart. Soon, Serena, soon you will be able to revenge. Suppressing the imminent killing intent in his heart, looking at Serena at the side, Chen Luo thought silently in his heart. Afterwards, the two came to the downstairs where Michael was again and got off the car one after another. The two looked at each other and then walked upstairs at the same time. When the two came to the room where the target was again, they were about to open the door, but at this moment, there was a faint roar from the corridor outside the door. Hearing this voice, Chen Luo's eyes suddenly became serious. He turned to look at Serena and said softly, "I'll go and have a look first. Be careful yourself. If there's anything wrong, just run towards me." "Well, I see." Serena nodded slightly, looked at Chen Luo with some worry, and said, "Be careful too." "Don't worry, don't you know my strength?" Chen Luo smiled, then immediately turned around and walked towards the end of the corridor. He strode forward, turned the corner, and came to the door at the end of the corridor. When he walked through that door, he was greeted by two burly men who had been waiting for a long time. "King." Seeing Chen Luo approaching, the two of them looked serious and quickly lowered their heads and asked respectfully. Chapter 122, Part 2. Chen Luo waved his hand, didn't pay much attention to these things, looked straight at the two of them and asked, "How is the arrangement with Lucien?" "King, the leader is ready." Hearing Chen Luo's question, the two quickly answered, "That's good." Chen Luo nodded with a satisfied smile on his face. Just before Chen Luo and the two came here, Lucien arrived with a group of subordinates, deliberately revealing Michael's whereabouts, and then attracted Serena's attention, leading him here. After coming to 230, Chen Luo will create an opportunity for Serena and Lucien to meet. As long as she can recognize Lucien's true identity, then this step of the plan will be considered a success. As long as Serena realizes that Lucien is not dead, she will also realize Craven's problem. At that time, with her loyalty to Victor, her most likely choice is undoubtedly to wake Victor up in advance. Let Victor himself deal with Craven. After all, Craven is now the well-deserved leader of the European vampire side. Even if it is Serena who exposes what Craven has done, there may be a small number of people who believe her, so her choice can be expected. And at that time, it was Craven's turn to perform. As for why Chen Luo went to such lengths to let Serena discover the truth by herself instead of telling the other party directly, the reason is also very simple. That is, Serena's trust in Victor is still too deep. After all, he has been her adoptive father for hundreds of years, and it is conceivable how deep the relationship was during this period. Based on her trust in Victor, even if Chen Luo chose to tell her the truth, she might not believe it. On the contrary, it might even hurt the relationship between him and Serena. So even for the sake of insurance, Chen Luo would not take this risk. Compared to telling her by herself, it is better to let her find out by herself. It will be more credible. Chapter 122, Part 1. Early the next morning, Chen Luo approached Serena early on, and then told her the news he had prepared earlier. "What? That human has returned? The werewolves didn't do anything to him?" After hearing the news from Chen Luo, Serena was also surprised. After the previous investigation, she found that the human named Michael was the target of the werewolf. In order to find out what the other party's purpose was, she and Chen Luo made a special trip, but found nothing. But she didn't expect that after only 2 days, the other party would be released by those werewolves. Such a situation could not help but attract her attention. After bowing her head and thinking for a while, Serena's face became a little dignified. Under normal circumstances, any human being who falls into the hands of werewolves will never have a chance of survival. But since Michael was able to return to his residence intact, in her opinion, there is only one possible explanation. That is, this human being has been assimilated into a werewolf. Hunting werewolves is also the responsibility of a Daywalker, and Serena was also a little curious about why the other party was targeted by werewolves. So after thinking for a short while, she suddenly made a decision. Chris, let's go over there and investigate again. Serena's words fell right into Chen Luo's arms, and he had no reason to refuse, and immediately nodded in agreement. Then the two set off immediately and drove towards their destination. On the way, looking at Serena's flawless side face, Chen Luo's heart moved. As if thinking of something, he asked curiously, "By the way, Serena, I heard from Craven that you are the adopted daughter of Elder Victor, right? Can you tell me about it? How did you meet?" Hearing this, Serena was silent for a moment. Her face became a little gloomy, and she slowly said, "That's right. If Victor hadn't saved me and transformed me into a vampire, I wouldn't have survived until now. Hundreds of years ago, the village where I lived was attacked by werewolves, including my parents, who were slaughtered by werewolves. I was able to temporarily escape from werewolves because my father hid me in an underground secret room early. Hunt. However, just when the werewolves were about to find me, Victor found them in time. After killing all the werewolves who attacked our village, he found me. It was also from that day that I began to walk in this world as a vampire." Serena slowly told Chen Luo her story. Although her face looked calm, Chen Luo could still faintly feel the hatred for werewolves in her heart, and for Vic, who was her savior. So much gratitude for that. Sensing her emotions, Chen Luo sighed inwardly. For this girl who has been kept in the dark for hundreds of years, my heart is full of pity, and at the same time, for Victor, the culprit, my heart is full of killing intent. Regarding the incident Serena experienced, Craven was at the scene at the time, and he watched how Victor brutally slaughtered all men, women, and children in the village, leaving only Serena alive. As for why Serena's life was spared, the reason is also very simple, because from the moment he saw Serena, Victor remembered the daughter who was killed by him at that time. Because the two are somewhat similar in appearance, and because Serena knows nothing about the truth here because she was hidden by her father, Victor decided to spare her life and she adopted her as her adopted daughter. Since then, Serena has spent hundreds of years in Victor's lies. In order to repay her adoptive father and avenge her parents, she has been hunting down werewolves as a member of the Daywalkers and serving the vampires. Contribute your strength? And Serena's miserable life was all caused by Victor. Therefore, after learning the truth from Craven, Chen Luo made a decision at that time. Only by giving the other party the most cruel death can he calm down the killing intent in his heart. Soon, Serena, soon you will be able to revenge. Suppressing the imminent killing intent in his heart, looking at Serena at the side, Chen Luo thought silently in his heart. Afterwards, the two came to the downstairs where Michael was again and got off the car one after another. The two looked at each other and then walked upstairs at the same time. When the two came to the room where the target was again, they were about to open the door, but at this moment, there was a faint roar from the corridor outside the door. Hearing this voice, Chen Luo's eyes suddenly became serious. He turned to look at Serena and said softly, "I'll go and have a look first. Be careful yourself. If there's anything wrong, just run towards me." "Well, I see." Serena nodded slightly, looked at Chen Luo with some worry, and said, "Be careful too. Don't worry, don't you know my strength?" Chen Luo smiled, then immediately turned around and walked towards the end of the corridor. He strode forward, turned the corner, and came to the door at the end of the corridor. When he walked through that door, he was greeted by two burly men who had been waiting for a long time. "King." Seeing Chen Luo approaching, the two of them looked serious and quickly lowered their heads and asked respectfully. Chapter 122, Part 2. Chen Luo waved his hand, didn't pay much attention to these things, looked straight at the two of them and asked, "How is the arrangement with Lucien?" "King, the leader is ready." Hearing Chen Luo's question, the two quickly answered, "That's good." Chen Luo nodded with a satisfied smile on his face. Just before Chen Luo and the two came here, Lucien arrived with a group of subordinates, deliberately revealing Michael's whereabouts, and then attracted Serena's attention, leading him here. After coming to 230, Chen Luo will create an opportunity for Serena and Lucien to meet. As long as she can recognize Lucien's true identity, then this step of the plan will be considered a success. As long as Serena realizes that Lucien is not dead, she will also realize Craven's problem. At that time, with her loyalty to Victor, her most likely choice is undoubtedly to wake Victor up in advance. Let Victor himself deal with Craven. After all, Craven is now the well-deserved leader of the European vampire side. Even if it is Serena who exposes what Craven has done, there may be a small number of people who believe her, so her choice can be expected. And at that time, it was Craven's turn to perform. As for why Chen Luo went to such lengths to let Serena discover the truth by herself instead of telling the other party directly, the reason is also very simple. That is, Serena's trust in Victor is still too deep. After all, he has been her adoptive father for hundreds of years, and it is conceivable how deep the relationship was during this period. Based on her trust in Victor, even if Chen Luo chose to tell her the truth, she might not believe it. On the contrary, it might even hurt the relationship between him and Serena. So even for the sake of insurance, Chen Luo would not take this risk. Compared to telling her by herself, it is better to let her find out by herself. It will be more credible. Chapter 123, Part 1. Just as Chen Luo was thinking this way, the next moment, a burst of intense gunshots suddenly sounded from the corridor. Hearing this voice, Chen Luo was refreshed. After dismissing the two people in front of him, he turned and walked towards the source of the voice. Boom! Just after he took a few steps, there was a sound of glass shattering, and a black shadow jumped out of the window instantly, fell to the ground, and ran towards the outside of the house. After meeting Serena, Lucian had no intention of fighting her at all, and immediately turned and fled. Definitely, with his current strength, it would only take a few tricks to subdue Serena, but even so, he didn't dare to make any rash moves. As the leader who can lead the werewolf family to confront vampires for hundreds of years, Lucian's wisdom cannot be underestimated. Even though Chen Luo didn't mention the relationship between him and Serena, through this time the plan, he still noticed the clue immediately. If Chen Luo didn't take it so seriously, why bother to make such a series of plans? Wouldn't it be more efficient to arrest Victor directly? Lucian, who is well aware of Chen Luo's strength, knows very well that as long as Chen Luo is willing to make a move, even if Victor's strength is among the vampires, he is only inferior to Marcus, the ancestor of the vampire clan, and he will absolutely block it. Can't help Chen Luo's tricks. Obviously, the reason why Chen Luo chose to do this means that this Selena must have a very important weight in Chen Luo's heart, and he will not be surprised that the two will be together in the future. Therefore, for this woman who might become a queen in the future, Lucian didn't dare to fight back at all. He just turned around and fled immediately after showing his face in front of the other party. Anyway, his current task has been completed, and the next step is to watch Craven's performance. Relying on several times faster than Serena, in less than a minute, Serena completely lost sight of the other party. Just when she was feeling a little annoyed behind her, Chen Luo came late. How about it, Serena? I heard gunshots just now. Are you all right? Serena shook her head to express that she was fine, then turned her head to look at Chen Luo and asked with concern in her eyes, What's going on with you? With your strength, it shouldn't take that long, right? Are you in any trouble? Small problem. It's just that those werewolves are a little hard to find, so it took a little extra time. Chen Luo made up a reason casually, looked around the room, and when he found nothing, he turned to look at Serena and said helplessly, It seems that there is no trace of Michael here. It seems that the gang of werewolves should have realized that we got the news, so someone came and took him away. This is the only possibility. Serena nodded, recalling Lucian's abnormal behavior before, subconsciously thought that the other party was going to escort Michael away so he didn't fight. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little helpless. Now that the clue of Michael disappeared again, the two of them had no reason to stay here and set off again towards the base camp. At night, there is still an hour before the awakening ceremony begins. At this time, Chen Luo and the two finally returned to the castle again. After getting out of the car, at this moment, Chen Luo seemed to suddenly think of something, turned his head to look at Serena, and said in a daze, By the way, Serena, I suddenly have some other thoughts about that human being. As for why those werewolves captured that human being, we may be able to find some answers from the records of werewolves. I think there may be corresponding books in this castle for the records of werewolves. Hearing this, Serena also felt quite reasonable, nodded in agreement, and then said, Then let's go and have a look. Just in time. I remember that there is an ancient book in the study that records all the history including vampires and werewolves. If there is any clue to be found, it is the only one. The two reached an agreement, and then, Serena took Chen Luo to a room that seemed to have been untouched for many years, rummaged through it for a while, and finally, on a bookshelf in the corner, they found the book Ancient Books. Can't wait to take it back to the room, the two searched together. However, after searching for a while, Serena seemed to have discovered something suddenly, and her brows subconsciously frowned. I seem to have seen this decorative pattern on that werewolf before. Looking at the shape of this pendant recorded in the ancient books and its related introduction, Na was immediately surprised. According to the records in the ancient books, this pendant was an ornament worn by the werewolf leader Lucia. After Lucian's death, this ornament disappeared along with the other party's death. Since this is the case, what happened to the pendant she saw before? Could it be that the person she met before was Lucian? But hasn't Lucian been killed by that guy, Craven? Could it be that Lucian is still a regenerative healing factor? Or is Craven lying? Thinking of this possibility, Serena was startled and subconsciously searched again. Chapter 123, Part 2. Turning to the last page of the ancient book, a piece of skin covered with strange symbols was nailed on it with several iron nails. According to the records in the ancient book, this piece of skin was the proof that Craven killed Lucian. It was precisely because of this that Victor valued Cleven and handed over most of the family's affairs to him to manage. Originally, she didn't have any idea about her adoptive father's decision, but now it seems that it was a wrong decision. If things are really as she thinks, then there is likely to be a secret relationship between Craven and Lucian, or even a secret alliance in private. Recalling that it has become increasingly difficult for them to grasp the movements of the werewolves over the years, now it seems that it is probably also from Craven's handwriting. Just thinking of this, suddenly, another astonishing guess flooded into her mind. Thinking of that possibility, Serena couldn't help being startled. Only then did Serena suddenly recall the incident in which Elder Amelia was attacked and killed by a werewolf last night. Logically speaking, the place where Elder Amelia appeared should not be known by the werewolves, but what everyone didn't expect was that the gang of werewolves found it there that night. She didn't think much about it before, but now that she thinks about it, the reason why the werewolf was able to clear that place probably has something to do with Craven. Jointly assassinate the elders with the werewolf clan? Thinking of this possibility, Serena felt a chill in her heart and couldn't help but be shocked by what Craven did. Why did he do this? What is the purpose of doing this? Serena frowned, pondered for a moment, and finally, she suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that he wants to kill all the elders and make himself the new king of the vampire clan? After thinking of this possibility, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Although this guess is outrageous, but thinking about it carefully, it seems that only this reason can explain why the other party did this. Realizing Craven's wolf ambition, Serena's face suddenly became more serious than ever. She turned her head, looked at Chen Luo, and solemnly expressed her analysis. After listening to her guess, Chen Luo subconsciously took a breath. Don't get me wrong, he was definitely not surprised by Craven's wolf ambition. On the contrary, he was surprised by Serena's mind-blowing ideas. Chen Luo, who knew the specific situation, definitely understood what was going on, but he didn't have the slightest intention to say it out. Instead, he nodded in agreement and said seriously, "It seems that Craven is indeed very suspicious." Seeing that Chen Luo also agrees with his opinion, before Serena is happy, Chen Luo then changed the subject and said, "But if there is no real evidence, even if I believe you, I'm afraid others won't believe it either. And with Cleven's status in the family, even if others believe in you, what can they do to him? After all, Cleven has been running this family for hundreds of years, and the power he possesses is definitely not something that ordinary people can deal with. Unless you have to wait for someone at the level of an elder to wake up, there is no possibility of stopping him." At this moment, Chen Luo already began to imply that in order to stop Craven's ambition, the only solution is to wake up the sleeping elders. After Chen Luo's reminder, Serena also seemed to think of something. First her eyes lit up, and then she said, "It's only a few hours away from the awakening ceremony. After the ceremony is over and Elder Marcus wakes up, we will." Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Chen Luo reaching out his hand. "Serena, don't forget another thing. Since Craven is going to become the new king of the vampire clan, how could he just watch the elder wake up? If my guess is correct, I'm afraid there will be an accident when the awakening ceremony just begins. Perhaps by then, the werewolves will come out to cause destruction." Hearing this, Serena's expression froze and her heart shook. At this time, she finally realized that if Craven really had such a wolf ambition as she thought, then he would never just watch the elder wake up like this. And during the awakening ceremony, the elder was in an unprecedented weak state. Taking advantage of this good opportunity, if he could kill all the elders in one fell swoop, then no one would really be able to stop him in the future. Thinking of this, Serena immediately ignored other things, and immediately got up to wake up the sleeping elder in advance. Wait a minute. At this time, Chen Luo suddenly reached out to stop her, looked at Serena's puzzled face, smiled wryly, and said, "Serena, you are too impulsive. It is not wise to wake up the elder now way of doing. If you don't have enough evidence to prove yourself, you will be punished for waking up the elders in advance. In my opinion, we might as well go to confront Craven first and test the other party's reaction. If the other party is really what we think and unites with Lucian, we should be able to see some abnormalities in the other party in the face of our questioning." Chapter 123, Part 3. If my guess is correct, maybe I can use this to find evidence that the other party has colluded with the werewolves. In this way, we don't have to worry about awakening the elders again. Reminded by Chen Luo, Serena also nodded in agreement, and then the two discussed it, and finally decided that Serena would come to confront Craven. while Chen Luo would observe in the dark. Let's see what reaction Craven will have after the confrontation between the two is over. As long as the other party changes and Chen Luo finds evidence of alliance with the werewolf, their next move will undoubtedly be very sure. Now there are only about 2 hours before the awakening ceremony begins, and knowing that time is running out, the two of them immediately started to act without any delay. Seeing the back of Serena leaving, Chen Luo sighed slightly, turned around and walked outside the gate without saying anything. Not long. Bang bang bang. Coming. Already Cleven, who had been waiting for a long time, was refreshed instantly. He came to the gate, opened it, and saw the person coming with a smile on his face, Zhao Diheo, and said, "Serena, what do you want me to do?" Walking into the room, Serena raised her head and looked at the other party expressionlessly, with complicated eyes. "Craven, did you really succeed in killing Lucian back then? Or did Lucian actually give you that piece of skin?" Hearing this, Craven's expression changed instantly, and an imperceptible panic flashed in his eyes, and he retorted subconsciously, "What nonsense are you talking about? Lucian is already dead, it's in my hands. Is there any doubt about it?" "Really? But I seem to have seen the legendary long-dead Wolf King today." Serena's face was indifferent, and anger surged in her heart. "So, this makes me feel helpless. No doubt, you used lies to win Victor's trust. What do you think Victor would do if he knew this? Traitor, enough." Craven's complexion changed suddenly, his eyes were about to breathe fire, and he looked at Serena with a stern face, and a deep voice sounded. "Stop talking about these unfounded guesses, Serena. If you think I'm related to werewolves, show me the evidence. If not, then I can only see off the guests. Then just wait and see." After staring straight at the other party for a while, Serena finally left a word coldly, then turned around and left the room quickly. Seeing the disappearing figure of the other party, Cleven, who was originally full of anger, changed his face instantly, and all his anger disappeared. Recalling Chen Luo's previous plan, Craven's eyes were a bit complicated, and he whispered to Xian, "Next, it's my turn to play." Then, after waiting for a while, Craven opened the door and gradually disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 124, Part 1. After going out, Serena immediately turned and walked towards her room. After returning to the room and waiting for a while, Chen Luo pushed the door open and entered. Seeing Chen Luo coming in, Serena immediately stood up, came to Chen Luo, and asked impatiently, "How is it? Did Craven make any moves?" Although there were doubts in her tone, at this moment, Serena was already convinced that, just as she thought, there was indeed some kind of connection between Craven and the werewolf. The reason is also very simple. When she came to confront Craven before, the other party's behavior was enough to explain something, and she also had a certain degree of certainty in her mind about the next action. It's just that if you want to really testify your doubts, you need to have decisive evidence. So, under Serena's expectant gaze, Chen Luo nodded with a smile, then took out the material evidence he had prepared and waved it in front of Serena's eyes. "Just in case, before following the other party, I took a camera to take pictures, so that with the above photos as evidence, our actions will be more convincing. As for Serena, the evidence you want is already here. Just as you thought, shortly after you left, I saw a car leaving here outside, so I followed medical." Paused, as if recalling something. Chen Luo's face showed a trace of solemnity, and said in a deep voice, "You never imagined. What did I see? Less than 2 kilometers away from the ancient castle, there are already a large number of werewolves waiting there, and their leader is the one you saw today, Serena." Hearing this, Serena's pupils shrank instantly, and she subconsciously said, "Lucian?" "That's right." Chen Luo nodded, and then said, "It seems that my previous guess is correct. Those werewolves will definitely wait until the awakening ceremony begins to attack us. Coupled with Craven's cooperation, it seems that they are well prepared this time. The only way now is to wake up the elders in advance, and to get rid of the traitor Craven first. Without his cooperation, the possibility of those werewolves trying to capture the castle will be greatly reduced. Now I have a photo of the werewolf leader in my hand. As long as I give it to the elder, he should be able to understand that what Craven said back then was all 070 lies." After listening to Chen Luo's analysis, Serena also understood the seriousness of the situation. Not far from the castle, a group of werewolves were watching and ready to attack at any time. And inside the castle, there is this traitor, Craven, cooperating inside and outside. With his help, if we take the initiative to let the werewolf in, all the vampires in the castle will undoubtedly be wiped out. You must know that the awakening ceremony is just around the corner, and those gathered in the castle are all high-level forces distributed by various vampires in Europe. In addition to the high-level forces, his descendants also came here with their parents. If they are all destroyed by werewolves, the vampire clan will undoubtedly fall into chaos in an instant. Such a result is undoubtedly what Serena does not want to see. Therefore, the best solution for the current plan is to wake up the elders in advance. With the power of the elders, the threat of Craven can definitely be eradicated. In this way, without Craven's cooperation, the werewolf will undoubtedly succeed. It's hard. Thinking of this, Serena's expression became solemn, and she did not neglect at all. She immediately led Chen Luo, and the two walked quickly towards the direction where the elder was sleeping. And just when Serena started to act, at the same time, the elders are sleeping in the ground. At this moment, Craven appeared here one step earlier. As Victor's appointed agent, Craven's journey was unimpeded, without anyone blocking him, and he successfully arrived at the destination of his trip. Standing near the place where Victor was sleeping, Craven took a deep breath as he thought of his next plan. His eyes became extremely serious, and he was ready. Prepare. Squat down and rotate the circular device on the ground clockwise. Then, accompanied by the sound of gears running. Immediately afterwards, under Craven's gaze, a circular passage with a diameter of about 2 meters slowly opened. As the passage opened, a whole body was pitch black, and a huge coffin with a hollow in the middle rose slowly from the passage, appearing in front of Craven's eyes. The coffin rose up little by little, and when it was fully exposed in the air, what appeared in front of Craven was a path about 2.5 meters high. The outer layer was made of steel, and the inner layer was covered with, wrapped in dark brown wood, looks extremely cold and huge coffin. And in the center of the coffin, there is a corpse lying in it, with its whole body dry, its skin like old bark, its eyes closed, without a trace of life. It seems to have fallen into an eternal deep sleep. The sleeping corpse in front of him is one of the 3 elders of the vampire clan, and the strongest vampire besides Marcus, Victor. Looking at Victor, who was falling into a deep sleep in the coffin, Craven didn't know what to think of, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes, but soon, the fear disappeared without a trace. Chapter 124, Part 2. After all, he has served under Victor for hundreds of years, and it is normal for him to have a little awe of his original master. If he hadn't joined Chen Luo's command now, he wouldn't have the courage to face Victor at this moment. But when he thought of what he was about to do, Craven couldn't help feeling a little nervous. Taking a deep breath, he controlled himself to calm down quickly, and then, Craven placed the coffin in front of him horizontally, and then, he took out a vial from behind. Open the cork and pour the blood inside, straight into Victor's mouth. Although there are only a few drops of blood in this vial, the blood was transformed by Chen Luo using the blood cup, and the energy contained in it is definitely not a small number. It is already enough to wake Victor up and recover quickly to peak condition. Sure enough, as the blood in the bottle fell into Victor's mouth, the energy contained in the blood quickly flowed throughout his body, as if injecting new vitality into his withered and old body, and his vitality slowly began to recover. The withered heart became bright red again, and began to beat again. With the operation of the heart, the blood in the whole body gradually began to circulate, reactivating all the organs in the body. Operations resumed. Immediately afterwards, under Craven's watchful eyes, Victor's whole body was dry and old, and the skin on it that was not full of gullies was rapidly recovering its luster, and the color of blood appeared on his face again. After receiving sufficient energy supplements, Victor finally regained his composure. Waking up from sleep, he slowly opened his eyes. Owner. Seeing Victor wake up, Craven didn't dare to neglect. He quickly lowered his head and greeted him respectfully. After moving his stiff body, Victor slowly got up, walked out of the coffin, and came to the ground. After looking around for a while, finally, Victor's deep and hoarse voice sounded. Craven, is it time for me to wake up now? Master. Craven's trembling voice sounded. Actually, it's not time for you to wake up now. Logically speaking, it should be 300 years before you wake up next time. Hearing this, Victor's originally calm face instantly turned gloomy. His brows were tightly frowned, and he slowly turned his head to look at Craven, when a cold voice sounded. What did you say? If you say that, did you wake me up 300 years in advance? Don't you know that this has violated the tradition of our vampire family? You should understand the consequences of violating the tradition. From the birth of the European vampire family, through the resolution of the 3 elders, during the reign of each elder, the other 2 elders will fall into a deep sleep, and a wake-up ceremony will be held every 300 years, and the elders will rotate again. This tradition has lasted for hundreds of years, and there have never been any accidents. However, Vegetable One manually broke this tradition today. As a decision made by the 3 elders, if you violate this tradition, the punishment will be extremely harsh. At that time, the violator will be punished by the sun, and will be reduced to ashes under the scorching sun and die. Regarding this regulation, Victor believed that Craven must be very clear, but even so, he chose to do so, and the reason for it could not help but slightly aroused his curiosity. But if you can give me a reasonable reason, I can give you a lighter punishment this time. Hearing this, Cleven did not dare to neglect it all, and immediately began to tell the other party the speech he had prepared. Master, actually, the reason why I woke you up early this time is mainly because of something wrong with Serena. Serena? What's wrong with her? Hearing this name, Victor couldn't help recalling the face somewhat similar to his own daughter, and said slowly with a few fluctuations in his eyes. Serena, she knows about that. Craven lowered his head even more, not daring to stop for a moment, and continued. The truth about her parents being killed back then, she knows it all by now. 1. This subordinate doesn't know exactly how she found out, but now this subordinate has received the news that Serena is coming here, and it seems that she wants to seek revenge from you, Master. Yeah. Hearing this, Victor's face froze, and he fell silent for an instant. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses. His face became indifferent again. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he said without emotion, Since Serena already knows the truth, there is no need to keep her up. I'll just wait for her to come over. When the time comes, I will send her along and reunite with her parents downstairs. After all, Victor turned his head to look at Craven, nodded slightly, and said, You did a good job in this matter. You can also be exempted from the punishment this time. Okay, just step back. You won't be needed here anymore. Craven didn't dare to say much, and immediately planned to turn around and leave. However, before he walked out of the gate, the next moment, there was a fierce fight outside the gate, and then the gate opened instantly. Serena and Chen Luo stepped into the gate one by one, and immediately bumped into Craven, who was about to leave. It's you. Chapter 124, Part 3. Seeing the person coming, Serena's face was startled, and a trace of doubt flashed in her heart. She didn't expect to be able to see the other party here. Logically speaking, after knowing that she had discovered his secret, shouldn't the most important thing for Craven at this moment be to have more fun away from the Elder's sleeping place? Will you take the initiative to enter here? Just when Serena was wondering, on the other side, Chen Luo exchanged glances with Craven seemingly inadvertently, and after receiving a confirmed reply from the other party, his heart instantly became clear. After subduing the werewolf clan, he also started to arrange for Serena early. In order for Serena to discover the truth by herself, Chen Luo first let Lucian show up in front of her, which made her suspicious of Craven, and then during the period when Chen Luo held her back first, Craven took the first step, go to the Elder's sleeping place and wake Victor up. As long as Craven takes the first step, Serena already knows after telling Victor the truth about the murder of his parents, he was preconceived. After seeing it, Serena came over, thinking that the other party was looking for revenge. Victor would also expose the hypocrisy. Mask, reveal your true colors. Only when Victor admits it himself, Serena will truly shatter all her fantasies about her adoptive father. At that time, Chen Luo will be able to solve it logically, and the fact is exactly as he expected. Before Serena could speak, the next moment, not far away, an extremely familiar voice sounded to her. You finally came. Under the nourishment of the blood provided by Chen Luo, Victor at the moment has returned to his peak state, wearing a black robe with a medieval atmosphere, and slowly came to Serena forward. At this moment, Victor's face was calm and terrifying, and the cold, murderous aura continued to surge outward, and the surrounding air seemed to drop a few degrees, which made people feel a chill in their hearts. Are you here to seek revenge from me? That's fine. Then come. But before I do it, I need you to answer one thing. Victor looked directly into Serena's eyes and asked each word, How do you know? Your parents died at my hands? Seeing Victor approaching, Serena's eyes flashed with joy, and she was about to say something. But when he heard what the other party said, he froze in place for an instant. You? What did you say? My parents were killed by you? Then what you told me before, that my village was slaughtered by werewolves, was it also a lie? After a while, she finally came back to her senses. Her heart was shaking violently. Her eyes were flustered. She looked at Victor in disbelief and asked with a trembling voice. Seeing Serena's reaction, Victor was also taken aback for a moment. As if he had thought of something, he immediately reacted, turned his head to look at Craven and his murderous intent sword. You lied to me? Staring at the other party, at this moment Victor finally realized something. The person in front of him who was personally appointed by him as the family agent had always been loyal to him. The servant actually completely betrayed him. Thinking of this, Victor's face turned black instantly, and the killing intent in his heart became even more violent. Chapter 125, Part 1. Feeling the aura on Victor's body at the moment, Craven swallowed subconsciously and took a few steps back, although he immediately wanted to turn around and flee. But when he thought of the invincible butcher standing behind him, Craven's heart instantly became much calmer. Bracing his courage, he looked at the other party without showing any weakness, and Craven said with a sneer, I didn't lie to you, Victor. If you don't believe me, see for yourself. Is Serena looking for you now, or is it just to reminisce? What Craven said to Victor earlier was not strictly speaking a lie. After all, according to what he said, Serena knew the truth and then sought revenge from Victor. Haven't all these things come true now? It's just a little difference in time. It's just ironic that Victor himself said the truth about all this. However, this is the only way to completely break all Serena's fantasies about Victor and fully recognize the reality. If it weren't for this, Chen Luo wouldn't have spent such a lot of time arranging this series of plans. But now it seems that it has finally come the time to finish. The other side. After seeing Victor's confession, Selena finally understood that the original respect for Victor had long since disappeared. Sadness and anger were intertwined in her eyes. White. As if seeing the complexity in Serena's heart at the moment, Chen Luo sighed slightly in his heart and slowly stepped forward, coming in front of Serena and covering her behind him. Leave it to me then. Just take a look here soon. He will pay for everything he has done. After saying this, Chen Luo turned his head to look at Serena, with a slight smile on his face. From now on, I will protect you. Staring blankly at Chen Luo's generous back, Serena's nose was sour. Her eyes were slightly moist. She looked straight at Chen Luo, and then nodded heavily. Looking at the scene in front of him, a chill flashed in Victor's eyes, and the icy killing intent continued to surround him, as if he was going to freeze the entire space, and a cold voice sounded. Hee, you said you want to deal with me alone? Just you? A little vampire. Regarding his own strength, Victor is very confident. Except for Marcus, who is the ancestor of the vampire family, he feels that no one will be his opponent, so he also disdains what Chen Luo Gang said. As a race that grows by sucking blood, generally speaking, as the age increases, after sucking a lot of blood, the strength of vampires is much stronger than those newborn vampires. And as one of the 3 elders of the vampire family, Victor has lived for more than 800 years. Such a long life is enough to make his strength grow to the point where other vampires are far behind. Not to mention the superb fighting skills that have been honed over a long life. In terms of physical fitness alone, Victor is more than twice as strong as ordinary vampires. With such a gap, he didn't feel that he would have any possibility of failure at all. However, Victor, who has been asleep for 300 years, doesn't know that the world today is different from what he knew before. Since decades ago, the world has also ushered in huge amounts of changes. First, the world's first super soldier, Captain America, was born, and then more and more mutants began to gradually awakening. After decades of development, now it has formed a tripartite force consisting of Hellfire Club, Mutant Brotherhood, and X-Men coexistence situation. Coupled with the rise of Chen Luo, the Butcher, it can be said that the world is far more dangerous than Victor imagined, and there are few existences whose strength surpasses him. Unfortunately, Chen in front of him, Luo, happened to be such an existence. But this is not the end. If in a few more years, when Iron Man officially debuts and the superhero era begins, by then, this world will be much more exciting than it is now. But in such an era, Victor has no chance to see it again. Since Chen Luo has made up his mind to make a move, today is the deadline for him to survive in this world. He had already regarded him as a dead man in his heart. For such a person, Chen Luo had no intention of talking nonsense with him. He walked slowly to him, beckoned, and said calmly, "Stop talking so much nonsense. Since you have the confidence, let's start. Let me see. What kind of strength do you, the elder of the vampire clan, have?" Seeing Chen Luo's nonchalant attitude, Victor's eyes flickered with coldness. His smile became even colder and crueler. His murderous aura surged rapidly and spread to the surroundings, and then, with a deep and hoarse voice, laughter sounded. Hee, since you are looking for death, I will give you a ride. As soon as the voice fell, the next moment, Victor shot instantly. Even if he doesn't have any weapons in his hands, with his hands alone, Victor has absolute confidence. He can directly twist the opponent's neck in less than 3 moves, and then send Chen Luo's soul to hell. Following the sound of piercing through the air, Victor's movements were as fast as lightning, and he appeared in front of Chen Luo in an instant. He stretched out his hands and grabbed Chen Luo's neck. As long as he managed to make contact with it, and then exerted a little force with his hands, he would be able to take Chen Luo's life. Chapter 125, Part 2. Seeing this oncoming blow, Chen Luo's eyes flashed, and he felt a little admiration for this old guy's fighting skills. As a veteran vampire who has survived for more than 800 years, there is no doubt that the opponent's fighting skills are much better than the skills he got from Blade. If it is in a similar physical condition, then Chen Luo is really impossible. Is the opponent's opponent. But now, no matter how strong the opponent's skills are, it is nothing but futile in the face of absolute power. Facing the opponent's fierce blow, Chen Luo didn't have the slightest intention of dodging and stood motionless, letting Victor wrap his hands around his neck. Seeing that he had made a contribution with one blow, Victor was surprised, but at the same time, he became even more disdainful towards Chen Luo. It turned out that when Chen Luo stepped forward and threatened to kill him, Victor thought that Chen Luo would have something to rely on, so he used all his strength as soon as he made a move. But he didn't want to use only one move, and the opponent didn't react at all, and he caught the vital point. Such a hip-pull performance, and recalling his cautiousness just now, for a while, Victor felt ashamed and annoyed. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. Victor didn't mean to stop at all, looked at Chen Luo, smiled cruelly, and said softly, "Bye now." Then, with a sudden force with both hands, Chen Luo's neck was about to be broken. "Don't want." Seeing this scene, behind Chen Luo, Serena's pupils began to shrink violently. A trace of uncontrollable panic appeared on her face, and she subconsciously stretched out her hand to stop it. However, she is still far away from Chen Luo now, and Victor has both hands on Chen Luo's neck at this moment. In such a situation, unless she can teleport otherwise, it is impossible to rescue in time. Seeing Victor start to exert his strength, seeing the ferocious and cruel smile on the other side's face at this moment, Lina was full of despair for a while. Hundreds of years ago, her parents died at the hands of Victor just like today. However, until now, she still has to watch the person she likes suffer the same fate. When she thinks of such an ending, Lin Na's eyes were covered with raging killing intent. As soon as she moved her feet, Serena immediately planned to rush forward to avenge Chen Luo, but before she could make a move, an extremely familiar voice sounded the next moment. "Old fellow, is that all you have left?" Lowering his head, looking at Victor, who was only a few centimeters lower than himself, Chen Luo's mouth showed a trace of coldness. How can this be? Looking at the unharmed Chen Luo in front of him, the ferocious and cruel smile on Victor's face instantly became dull, and his eyes were full of disbelief. Although the blow just now looked simple, he had used all his strength, and he was attacking such a weak part as the neck. Logically speaking, with his strength 10 times that of ordinary vampires, it was enough to knock the neck of an ordinary person. It is not difficult to twist it off directly, or even tear it off together with the head, but for Chen Luo, it has no effect. Chen Luo was not surprised at all. Although Victor at the moment strength attribute is converted into numbers, it would still have a terrifying value of 40 or 50 points, but facing Chen Luo, whose strength attribute has already reached 3 digits, there is undoubtedly a huge amount of gap. In addition to the gap in strength, Chen Luo also has the blessing of the ability of the steel body. Under the effect of this ability, his body is like poured steel. With his current defense power, even a monster as big as King Kong is confident that he can resist it, let alone the attack in front of him. Rot? Completely ignoring the opponent's attack, Chen Luo's face was full of calm. Is there any other way? If not, then it can be over. What did you say? Hearing this, Victor's face, which was still full of disbelief, was instantly filled with anger, and the killing intent surged wildly in his heart, and then his body instantly disappeared in front of everyone. There was a rapid sound of breaking through the air, and then, when Victor reappeared, he was already behind Chen Luo. At the end of both hands, the nails began to grow wildly, and in the blink of an eye, sharp claws were formed, aiming at the back of Chen Luo's heart and clawing straight forward. This move is also the ultimate move he often uses when hunting. As a vampire who lives on blood, Victor always has a different preference for the blood of the human heart. Therefore, every time he hunted and killed human beings, he would directly take out their hearts while they were still alive and taste the sweet blood in them. Looking at the unsuspecting Chen Luo, Victor had a hint of excited smile on his face. He couldn't wait to see the blank and painful expression on the other side's face after taking out his heart. There was a piercing sound like fingernails scratching a steel plate the moment Victor's hands touched Chen Ho's back. Immediately afterwards, accompanied by a sharp pain, under Chen Luo's steel-like defensive power, his pair of sharp claws broke instantly, and his hands were bleeding profusely. I said. Chapter 125, Part 3. Why do you all like to use your claws to grab other people's clothes? Sensing the movement from behind, Chen Luo looked a little worried, turned around, and suddenly drew an afterimage with his hands, and instantly grabbed the opponent's wrists. This is not a good habit. Click. The next moment, with Chen Luo's hands slightly exerting force, under the action of huge amounts of strength, the opponent's hands and wrists were instantly crushed by his huge force. Let go of the opponent's already shape-shifting wrist, Chen Luo still kept moving, pinching the opponent's neck with one hand, and then forcefully throw it to the ground. Boom. There was a dull bang, and under Chen Luo's overwhelming strength, Victor had no room to resist, and his whole body was smashed to the ground. Nearly half of the bones in the body were broken in an instant, and the internal organs were also shifted. At this moment, Victor's brain fell into a state of dizziness, and he completely lost the strength to resist. But Chen Luo, who knew the vampire's recovery speed, didn't stop there. He raised his foot and stomped on the opponent's legs, smashing the bones of his legs to ensure that it was gone. After the possibility of escape, he finally stopped the movement. His legs received such a heavy blow again, and Victor, who was still a little unconscious at first, was awakened by the severe pain in an instant, screaming on the ground with a face of pain. Okay, this side has been resolved. Next, it depends on Lucian's performance. Looking at Victor, who had no power to resist on the ground, Chen Luo nodded slightly, then turned to look at Craven behind him, and said lightly, Craven, contact Lucian, you can start to act? Yes, Master Chen Luo. Craven replied subconsciously, but the next moment he reacted instantly, realized something, turned his head a little stiffly, and looked at Serena at the side. Sure enough, Serena, who was still shocked by Chen Luo's successful handling of Victor so quickly, was instantly drawn to it after hearing Craven's answer. Oh, Chen Luo. Why does this name sound familiar? Wait. Chen Luo. That legendary butcher. Finally realizing something, Serena's eyes widened subconsciously, and she looked at Chen Luo in surprise. Chris, are you just? Seeing that Serena had already guessed his identity, Chen Luo smiled helplessly, no longer intending to hide it, and nodded slightly, admitting it. Sorry, I haven't told you about my real identity before. Let's get to know each other again. My name is Chen Luo. The previous name Chris was just my pseudonym. Seeing Chen Luo personally nodding and admitting, although he had already vaguely expected it, after receiving an affirmative answer, Serena still had her brain shut down and stood there blankly, taking a long time to come back to her senses.